Welcome to the Femsplainers. This is Christina Hoff-Summers.
And this is Danielle Christina. I have to phone in to this week's episode because I am in Palo Alto for these couple of weeks. And it's a long story, and it's a stressful story. But Christina, you and I have both had a couple of very rough and emotional weeks, not least because you were, aside from going to 100 campuses and getting yelled at, you had a memorial service for your mother. I'm dealing with a serious health issue with my eldest daughter. So the good thing is this is the last episode of season 3. So we're going to take a week's break next week and be back stronger May 14th. But hope you'll forgive the poor quality of my connection.
Well, it has been, for me, like a stressful month because first there was Australia and then the campus tour, which was a mix of reactions. I went to colleges like Skidmore and UCLA Law, just full of extremely angry young women. But then at UCSB and University of Santa Cruz, they were great fans of the Femsplainers. And they couldn't have been nicer, and they were so smart and wonderful. But
what
go ahead.
What is that you notice about the differences between these two audiences? Like, how do you tell, or how do you explain where you get a good reception and where you get a bad reception?
I can never predict, and of course, it depends a lot on the audience. So I would say at UCSB and Santa Cruz was mostly fans. And that's a lot of fun, and they appreciate.
But is that because it's being hosted by?
Well, they were all hosted.
Conservative groups,
they were all hosted by conservative organizations because liberal organizations don't invite me to campus. But the
which is insane.
Young America's Foundation and the Federalist Society often invite me, and so I'm able to visit a lot of campuses. But I just never know who will come. And in the case of the University of at UCLA Law School, the audience was divided in half, and half of the room was full of women, probably members of the UCLA, Women's Law Review, and the other half was, just smart, reasonable, normal law students. But these women were frantic and furious, and they kept, raising their hands while I was speaking to get me to stop. And I said, no, I'll take questions afterwards. And they were triggered. And then they, one after the other, they would just shoot these questions. And the whole time they had their computers open and they were typing and researching. It was just get the guest. There was
were they questions or statements?
Statements, angry statements, and insults. What are your credentials? I see you haven't had a peer review article since you were a philosophy professor, X number of years ago. It wasn't, I just would ask them, how is that relevant to my evidence? And you can check the evidence yourself. But none of it mattered. And I actually worry that there is a kind of contagion of hysteria, and it can strike very smart people, because I presume you have to be extremely intelligent to get into UCLA Law School.
Well, this is my beef on behalf of you. This just really bugs me all the time, is you really represent a liberal centrist view of not just women, but the world in general. And when you were on your talking tour in Australia with Roxane Gay,
right,
which was, by the way, just wonderfully and hilariously written up in New York Magazine. We've linked to it on our Facebook, and of course you've tweeted about it, and the Femsplainers Twitter account has tweeted about it, but a really wonderful write-up.
By Jesse Signal, yeah.
Right, it's Roxane Gay. I mean, it's not a bias, it's a very straight write-up, but she is such a diva. She doesn't want any contradiction. In fact, where there were where she felt she hadn't come off as well as she'd hoped, she tried to demand that be removed from the upcoming video, which I'm looking forward to. If she wanted to change the moderator, she wanted to change, and we talked about this when you got back from that tour.
Yeah, she wanted her in the middle. She didn't like
unreasonable and anti any opinion that's not hers, and yet, she's going on than the Andy Cohen show because she's seen as the reasonable person and you're seen as the, the radical. And
oh, no, I saw her recently on...
the reverse.
It may have been an old podcast, but she was on with the comedian Sarah Silverman, who was promoting...
I love Sarah Silverman.
I do too. But she wouldn't have me on, but she had Roxanne on and was promoting her as, this great voice for women. And and Roxanne is very irrational, in my opinion. And, she called me a white supremacist. We talked about that. You know what it was like? Not that you have seen Rocky IV, but anyone out there...
Funnily, I have not.
It was Rocky...
It on my list of watch list?
Well, it was Rocky sort of on his own against the Russian. And the Russian had a whole...
Oh, I did see that.
He had a whole team of experts and getting steroid shots and, all this high-tech equipment to train him, and an entourage of doctors and advisors. It was like that with her. She had agents and this team back home of lawyers and advisors, and they were all madly, texting and emailing poor Desh, this wonderful guy who had invited us and organized this thing. And they were, that was where they pressured him to remove the moderator. How dare you ask her these, unfair questions? And as you said, I think she thought they were unfair because it seemed abnormal to her to be challenged in any way. Yeah,
like even on the weather,
Right.
It looks overcast. No, it's not.
I know.
It was nuts. Anyway, I thought that was a wonderful write-up. And you came off as just like the most, not just reasonable in your opinions, but reasonable in like, oh, sure, if she wants to change the moderator, that's fine, whatever.
Well, I was worried about Desh.
Like he was dealing with this, nightmare client who he could not please or... Anyway, it was funny. It was worth reading, and I hope the video comes out.
It's out, actually.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, okay, I'm afraid to watch
definitely.
it. I'm afraid to watch it.
I'll watch it. We'll link to
watch it. And
I'm going to have popcorn.
No, just because I was... Every time I said anything, the audience would boo. And then no matter what she said, however prosaic, riotous, rapturous cheering. And it was unnerving. So I'm just afraid that I was rattled. But
I don't know. Okay, I'll watch it for you and tell you if it's safe to watch. It's like when you close your eyes during like violent movies and things. The other person has to say, you can look now and it's fine. But you also had a memorial service for your mom,
and it was for
Malibu?
My dad too.
Oh, sorry, Santa Monica.
In Santa Monica,
yeah, your dad.
And we hadn't even asked for this, but because we were burying their ashes near my grandma and my aunt, and I don't know how this happened, but the military alerted us and said, Kenneth Hoff, my dad, they said he was, a war hero, and we have a ceremony. And they came, and these officers came, and they played taps and did a flag ceremony, and then gave me the flag. And it was so moving and so beautiful. My dad was on a ship in the Philippines and treated people that had been in the Bataan March and, in the camps in the Philippines and, close to death. And he saved a lot of people. But anyway, it was just it was for both my parents, and it was remarkable. But so many things in so few days, because I had just come from not only lecturing at the University of Santa Cruz, which went well, but I saw you and your daughter Mandy the night before she went. Well, you tell the story of what you've been doing.
Oh, I was so glad you were here. What a fortuitous moment that you had to lecture at Santa Cruz the night before. I was with my daughter. She was being treated at Stanford. Actually, listeners may remember that Miranda, who's 27, has come on and femsplained about dating. She developed, David says I can't call it benign because that implies like it's nice. He says a non-malignant tumor, brain tumor. And it turned out to be a very, very difficult and tricky. I said, Miranda, you're original and rare in everything you do, including the brain tumors you get. And so she had this very difficult tumor, and we found an amazing surgeon. You have a total crush on him, as I kind of do too. He saved my daughter's life.
And he's a genius, and an artist. I mean,
he's also named Dr. Miranda.
Yeah. But it's just that he could do that kind of thing. I mean, she had this very difficult tumor that was threatening her optic nerve wrapped around the pituitary gland. I mean, it was in a...
it was pushing up her brain. I mean, it was just... And we only found out about it really last Thanksgiving. And, she was having some vision problems, some hormonal problems, but, it never occurs to you, there must be a tumor. So when we got the tumor news, that was kind of surreal. And then she was trapped in a horrific healthcare situation where the people who were going to do her brain surgery in Los Angeles, where she had been living, were suggesting that they'd cut, sort of Frankenstein 1930s Boris Karloff era, cut open the top of her head to get to a brain tumor at the base of her brain. And this just didn't seem right to me. So then, as you know, you were with us through this. We found this remarkable surgeon. We had to go through this terrible fight to get her off her crappy insurance and onto good insurance so she could be treated by this amazing surgeon. But it was a real lesson to me, aside, so many takeaways, but one of the things I just felt is, what if I had not found Dr. Miranda? That people often don't get second opinions. They trust, the medical advice they receive.
And I will add, she had a great advocate in her mother. Mm-hmm. Well, because you've told me about these doctors, they did not want to allow you to go outside the system. And you were like Marissa Tomei in My Cousin Vinny.
Let me tell you what kind of brain tumor she has.
With more information.
I researched the hell out of it.
They were just gasping.
But it was rare. None of these doctors at her previous insurance had seen it, had ever come across it. So they were treating it as this completely normal thing. But the thing that twigged me was, and to get this second opinion outside of the system, and it turns out with a sort of preeminent expert surgeon, was that they said, well, it's in a kind of tricky place in her brain. It's not the usual kind of basic brain tumor. And then the minute they said it was tricky, and the minute they said, and the way we're going to deal with it is cut open her head like Frankenstein, that was where I thought, you know what? I think we need to find at least get another opinion. They may well be right. And I think what I learned from previous health situations in our family, it's one of the great lessons, I think. David's mother, my husband's mother, who died in her 50s, it's just unbelievable, from lymphoma, and had struggled with this for 20 years. She was the one who said that every patient needs an advocate, usually in your family, somebody who is outside of you, basically, who is listening to the doctor, who is questioning the doctor. Because when it's your condition, you often don't hear the doctor. Like, you're told you have a brain tumor, and then it's like blah, 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 blah. But you want that outside advocate for you, just taking notes and looking to help you make the right decisions. And so I became that person for Miranda, but of course her mother, so how could I not be? But the upshot is, you were with us literally the night before she went in and the day that she went in, and you saw her in the ICU after a 10-hour terrifying surgery.
And the night before, she was so brave and, was up with us and
jolly.
And it's just incredible. And now it's a week and a day.
She's
2 days later.
She's just passing a week, and
2 days.
She's remarkable, and she
had ice cream, and I saw a picture of her looking glamorous.
The salt and straw, everybody, you can order it online, best ice cream in the world. And she had this craving. I said, well, let's do it. So we did, and that was like her first outing. So no, she's recovering very well, and the doctor says, the surgeon says she will be able to live a normal life. And it's also one of the things, I don't know if you've ever had this, Christina, but you get some health issue and you tell somebody about it, and you find out like 9,000 people have gone through this, and you'd be amazed at how many people have had brain tumors, and also at the level of expertise they have now. I mean, one of the reasons I think she's doing so well is not least because of her surgeon, but and her youth, of course, but the surgery now, I mean, they went through her nose. They didn't cut the top of her head open. They did it sort of endoscopically, and you just recover so much better when it's, less intrusive. I mean, it's bad enough as it is, but
well, I once
anyway,
had,
thank God she's come through it.
A lot less serious, but I had rotator cuff surgery 4 or 5 years ago. I felt like it was the weirdest thing in the world, only to find out that all these handsome guys, because I had to have my arm in this weird contraption for 6 weeks afterwards, and all these sort of cute guys in their 30s would come up and say, "Oh, you had rotator cuff surgery." I had it, because it turns out baseball players, young ones, who played like Little League in college and high school, they have to have it. And then I found everybody, I didn't even know what a rotator cuff was until I had to have the surgery, but everybody's had it. But I didn't know that about brain tumors. But actually, I have been telling people, and they all know somebody, who's had a benign tumor. So, oh gosh. Anyway, I'm so
Miranda's
grateful.
Miranda, as you know, is an extremely witty person, and she was talking while we're, in the couple months as we're researching and getting MRIs and things, she developed a hashtag she called tumor humor, and she would make jokes, or I would make jokes, and we were allowed to make jokes about it. But one of the most poignant things she said, she asked her dad, she said, "Dad, when you're dating somebody, on what date do you tell them you have a brain tumor?" She called this dating with brain tumor. And her father said, "Well, I think, look, if you were once a man and are now a woman, I think you have to own up to that right away on the first date. but tumor, you don't owe anybody an explanation, at least until date 4 or 5, if you think there's any seriousness. But I'm begging her to write a column about this when she's better, but being single and the amazing things that single men say to you when you have a brain tumor is extraordinary. I'll give away one tidbit and hope she doesn't get mad at me for doing this, but she said once sort of the news of this was spreading amongst her friend group, 3 ex-boyfriends messaged her and said they'd be willing to have sex with her if she wanted it.
Oh my
God.
I know, right? Even some of these people were now with other people, but I know, you may just be feeling unattractive, but I will suck it. I will have sex with you.
You know what? If I were having surgery and all that and got messages like that, I might find it strangely consoling. At my point in life.
Let's bear in mind that Miranda, with or without tumor, is an impressive, beautiful woman. I'm sure she had dumped these guys,
Right.
And I'm sure it was their way of oh, maybe now is my opportunity.
Right, was their opportunity.
Anyway, it's been quite a thing, but we're very grateful. And Palo Alto is lovely, and Stanford is the most amazing hospital I think I have ever been in.
Does she still have to go back?
Yeah, just some tests, and we're hoping to come home in a week or so. But she, it's so beautiful here, and the facility itself, everybody is happy. The nurses are amazing, and I said to her surgeon, I said, this isn't even like a hospital. This is like a facility that just happens to have sick people in it, because
I actually find hospitals inspiring because it's just this center of goodness and an effective altruism. People come and, for the most part, are made better. Miraculous. I mean, I've seen family members that just go in such a terrible condition and they're cured.
Right. Well, also, we didn't mention this, and then we can change topics, but Stanford is dog friendly.
Oh, yes.
And Miranda has her little Cavalier King Charles Spaniel called Ringo, and he's a certified emotional support animal. He has a little, vest. They let him into the ICU with her after surgery.
I was so impressed. And he was so well behaved, so much better than Izzy. I don't think Izzy would work out in the ICU. There would be issues.
No, but he was with her at every test. He just sat on her lap. And when she was in ICU, he knew that he couldn't, he somehow intuited that he couldn't step on her, or do what like he did. So he just sat in a chair next to her bed and looked at her. It was he's been so amazing. He's been an ESA to us all.
I was with him the night before, and I thought he needed to play. And I was a little disapproving and bragging that Izzy knew how to fetch. And then I just threw this little device, little toy. And that dog immediately runs, brings it to me, and sits. Perfect, far better than Izzy can do it. So it's like, did you deliberately train him? Or
no, but Miranda has given him a full LA lifestyle. So from the moment she adopted him a year ago when he was a puppy, he's been, going to the Bel Air Hotel for drinks and.
Well, I think we have to post his picture. I think we have to make Ringo.
I will post a picture of him on our Instagram and Facebook. Yeah, but you can see Ringo the miracle dog.
Well, anyway, go ahead.
Okay, so we're not having a guest this week for obvious reasons, but we do have a lot to sort of just catch up on because you were away and I did the last podcast with our great substitute co-explainer, Megan Cox-Gurdon. We just have a few articles we want to discuss, and then we can catch up on listener reaction, and then we'll all take a little bit of a well-earned break. Christina, the article I think we both most want to talk about just came out in the New York Times about women and work,
right?
Mothers and work. And again, going back to why are the Roxanne gays listened to as the authority, this New York Times article affirms everything you have said about the pay gap. And if I may say, it has affirmed everything I've said about mothers' preferences when they have children. And let's talk about that.
Yes, it's in the New York Times, April 26th, by Claire Kane Miller. Women did everything right, then work got greedy. How America's obsession with long hours has widened the gender gap. And what's very interesting is, and as I have said, and you, that the gender gap in the pay gap is not caused by ruthless, unscrupulous employers deliberately paying women less for the same work. As this article explains, the gap shows up most and most pronounced in workers, sort of high-level professions in law, in finance, and jobs where they put a premium on having just unfettered access to your time, where you can go and work crazy hours. And it turns out that to the extent that anybody's willing to do that, there are just more men than women. And if you are willing to do that at these high-level jobs, there's a huge premium in your pay. So you get very rich. And so the article explains that typically it's a man who, in these power couples. She may be as educated, she may be in the same field, but they have kids, and she will often step back and work less and not come anywhere near his earnings, but he will have this super career that can support the family in, very high level. And
right. It said, sorry. I was just going to say there's a paragraph in it that says, this is not about educated women opting out of work. They are the least likely to stop working after having children, even if they move to less demanding jobs. So, yeah, that means they also have the most fulfilling careers, right?
Right.
They still want to keep working even if they don't have to. It said it's about how the nature of work has changed in ways that push couples who have equal career potential to take on, quote unquote, I'm doing quote unquote, unequal roles. Women don't step back from work because they have rich husbands. They have rich husbands because they step back from work. So that's right. There's somebody in this couple that they profiled. It was like two lawyers with like equal law degrees. And when they had their first child, she agreed to step back, and she's taken on like a part-time job, lawyer position in, I think, the New York City government. And he, is on the partner track and working the 80-hour work week. And she's there to be, with the kids and the doctor's appointments and managing that aspect of the household. And they acknowledge that, it couldn't be done if both of them tried to do the 80-hour work week.
And to those in our audience who are thinking, oh, well, why should it be the mother? Well, if you look at studies by Gallup or the Pew Research, you find that this is a preference. That if you ask mothers, what is your ideal work situation? Most of them say either working part-time or not at all. And you find only about, well, this data could be a little, I haven't seen the latest data, but as of 2012, it was 32% of women wanted to work full-time, even after kids, but 67 either wanted to work not at all or part-time. Then that was their choice. And for men, most of them wanted to work full-time.
All right, but step back a little from this. Let's not even, exactly. And you know what? This has been consistent since you and I started writing about this 20 and 30 years ago.
Right.
That when a woman has a choice, and a lot of women don't have choices, and I think we've talked about this in the past. I think most women are employed in retail. They're not in jobs they enjoy, and if they had the chance to give up being a cashier, they would heartily take it. We're stepping back to, we're looking at equality from a very rigid gender perspective, that it can only be defined in male and or materialistic terms. So the fact that a woman might want to be with her children is somehow embarrassing, unequal, a poor choice. Unless she's earning money and in these cases making partner, somehow it's a huge sacrifice to want to be with your children. And of course, we can talk about the financial risks and sacrifices that woman makes, and those are very real, especially in a time when marriage is less stable. But when I had Miranda, my first child, my immediate impulse was not to say, oh, okay, drop the baby, can't wait to toss her to someone else so I can get back, to working. That's not your emotion. And I just remember thinking, how am I and how are we as a couple going to make this work so I can spend as much time as I can with her? And I think the father feels the same way. It's not like he's brazenly walking out the door and saying, have fun with that. Children transform your lives. It's the most important contribution we can make to our society, but also the greatest enrichment to our own lives. And it's being treated as,
even the New York Times,
in the office.
Even the New York Times, this article, which was actually a good analysis of the wage gap, but it did seem to convey the idea that this was like a bad thing that women did this.
Right.
And, you say it's this, same for fathers. It's not quite the same for most men that I've known. They can go away for 40 hours a week or not. They're not crestfallen if they can't see the child. But for a lot of us, when you have a little baby, you don't want to go away that many hours per week. And it's transformative. I think because of the way we're taught to think about these things, that's why it was so, I think, shocking when I had, Miranda, my first child, because I had until that moment thought of myself as this completely equal, I'm a girl, and he's a boy, but we're the same. We can do the same things. We can pursue the same careers, yada, yada, yada. Yeah, nobody tells you that you're going to fall so madly in love with this little creature and be so bonded and transform. And
your body tells you this too. It's
yes.
It's not like the man is breastfeeding,
Right.
And it's like, how can I remember looking at this little thing in my arms with the little bright blue eyes that they have right after they're born, and just thinking, I never want to let you down. I never want to, you can't explain this to non-parents, who only see, the noisy kids in restaurants, but you can't explain to them.
Although I will tell you, when I first had David, my mother was there doing everything, and then she left, and then I thought, I have to do all of this by myself. It was sort of overwhelming to take care of a little baby all by yourself. And Fred was a great father when David was a little older, but as a baby, that was a lot. But I got a nanny who was Russian, and she started to swaddle him and take him out into the ice cold, and he began to look like her. Anyway, that's another story.
No, but you know what I mean? Like you until you've had this experience. And then I think what bothers me about even in this story, sort of acknowledging that there are going to be these quote unquote unequal relationships, and women are the ones who by and large choose to make that sacrifice when they're in situations where they can choose.
But I have known I've run into a few couples where it's the reverse. They both have jobs, but hers is one of these jobs where there's a
more important, right?
Huge benefit to long hours, and they switch. And what I find is these stay-at-home fathers, it's relatively rare, but it can work. As long as they aren't held up to the standards of the typical mom, because they're a little different. Stay-at-home dads just do it a little different, in my experience. And
not to the worst. No, but I mean this idea that you're not equal, or you're making a poor choice by doing this. That's what. Oh, and even when they're talking about the wage gap and acknowledging that women drop out, that it's somehow a bad and detrimental thing. And and how do we get more women back in the workforce faster without ever considering the greater dimensions of why women do this?
And then they'll say, oh, we need full-time daycare, and we need to have, government-funded preschool and all of that. They've got that in Scandinavia, and it still hasn't closed the wage gap. And in fact, it's a complicated issue, but it's called the Nordic paradox. In many ways, Scandinavian women are behind American women in terms of breaking the glass ceiling.
But it's also, and if again, to take one more step back from this, is that the couple that they describe, this New York lawyer couple, the marriage contract used to recognize that, its default setting that the woman would either pass, completely not work, or at least definitely step back. And that's a real risk that this woman is taking.
Right.
And, that the deal that this couple is making is that she will share in the husband's gains, right? Like you're a family unit,
right.
So he's going to go work the 80-hour weeks, you'll cut back, but in the long run, it'll all work out because it's money, and, we're going to share everything in that. And then if the marriage doesn't work, I mean, that remains the scary thing, and that is the real risk to any woman who, you don't have as many protections as you once had.
Yes, in the old days before the no-fault divorce and all of that, even if it was fairly rare for marriages to fall apart, for better or worse, but if they did fall apart, the structure of responsibility remained in place, and he was responsible for, taking care of her in the, to lifestyle she was accustomed. That's all gone, and but here's the thing: when I look at this study and I look at the Pew findings, the Gallup findings, it's also this researcher, Catherine Hakim, she used to be at the University of London. She found the same thing in Western Europe, that typically women, if they could have their way, it was about 20% of women were full-time, high-powered careerists. About 20% wanted to stay home and have no job. And then there was a huge group in the middle, 60%, she called them adaptives, who wanted to work, once they had children, they wanted to work part-time. And so we don't have a women's movement that represents the preferences of a majority of women. Now, just think about if we had that. If all these years, and I mean, the current women's movement and so-called, the gender studies experts, they can tell you all about their efforts for getting rid of a baby, like having abortion or, having daycare. They work for that. But what about if you want to stay home with your baby? And that is the preference of a majority of women. And yet there's very little activism around that, of building a society where that's possible. And they do that better in places like Holland and Denmark, where if you want to stay home, you can, or work part-time. We don't do it at all. They never want to imitate that. They only want to work for the high-octane careerists.
Right. Well, in sum, I can just put this bluntly from this experience of this past week and months is, you don't care if your job gets a tumor or,
Yeah.
Like, when your child gets a tumor, like, it's your life. I mean, I remember Miranda and I were tumor humoring, joking around, and she said to me, oh, easy for you to say, Mom, you don't have a brain tumor. And I said, you know what? Yes, I do.
I know.
That your tumor is my tumor.
I know, it's true.
You feel everything they feel.
No, the worst thing that can happen to your kid is the worst thing that can happen to you.
Right. And this idea that it's best to get the hell out of there as soon as you can back to the office. I mean, I understand the economic incentives behind that. But as you say, none of these organizations, none of these studies recognize that, you know what, maybe being with your child, especially when they're young, I mean, it's exhausting and everything that they say about having small children, but it's also fulfilling and meaningful. I mean, I will never forget those days of pushing Miranda in her stroller to the park and sitting on the edge of the sandbox and watching what Thomas Hobbes or Jean-Jacques Rousseau's State of Nature.
Oh yeah,
be enacted in front of me, and the kid who's the little Donald Trump kid in the sandbox is organizing all the other kids into building sandcastles, and the bully. And I just they're magical times to me, and I'm very grateful that I had them, and I'm grateful I had a husband supportive of that. And you're right. I mean, how can we? That should be the focus of the movement. How can we just be more supportive of?
Well, maybe in a future podcast, I will give a little report on what they do in Holland. It's called, there's a book or an article that I read called The Country That Missed Feminism. And they actually are very emancipated. Dutch women are far from being oppressed.
Oh,
but
yeah.
they just didn't indulge the high-powered careerist model of success. They're very devoted to what the Dutch call gezellig. Oh God, who can say this? This was a test in World War II to see if you were a spy. Can you say gezelligheid? Gezelligheid? Gezellig, coziness.
This word. This is one of your favorite words.
Yes, I do, because in Holland, everything is so, well, first of all, it's a toy country. It's like being in a dollhouse, being in that country. Everything is miniature and lovely.
I love Holland. You should maybe move to Holland if things don't really work out for you.
I know if I get driven out of the country by the Women's Law Center at UCLA.
You're going to Holland and you're going to just sit back and smell
No,
the
but but the women, even if they don't have kids, they still work part-time. And it's just and they're always getting together with their friends. And then
it's this thing called life,
Yeah. What happened to that?
This article did talk about, like, the Japanese are having, like, work fatigue because, you know what? It's crazy, but being at the office for 80 hours a week, and then don't forget being online outside of that, that's not life. So maybe we just need to just forget about a feminist or women's movement. We just need to start a life movement that brings back joy. And I mean, one of the things, honestly, going through this experience with Miranda is, the first time we sat out on a little patio here where we are, and the birds were singing, and I had my gin and tonic. Miranda had her herbal tea, and there's a breeze, and the flowers are out, and you just think,
oh, so grateful.
Wow, this is lovely. I'm so grateful for this, and she's so grateful. And
when can she have wine?
Remember that. I don't know. Admittedly, I'm not going to push that one.
That's always my metric for recovery.
Yeah, same. Okay, I'm transitioning now from morphine to wine.
Right.
Anyway,
By the way, I want to say
stories.
one last thing about this article.
Okay.
And I don't think this was a serious suggestion by the economist they quote, Claudia Golden, but she sort of hinted that if we wanted to change the economy and actually close the wage gap, maybe we could just, I don't know, she didn't say make a law, but say make a law against overtime, that everyone would have to limit themselves to 40 hours a week. I find that, and I'm not saying she said that, but she sort of hinted that might be the only solution. Who wants that solution? When there are workaholics, there are mad geniuses who want to work that
Says
long.
the Twitter addict.
No, I mean, my friend's father had a store. He was in that store 90 hours a week, but he loved it. And he made a success. Look, I don't think anybody ever won a Nobel Prize on flex time.
And nobody, as the old cliche goes, lay on their deathbed saying, I wish I spent more time at the office.
I don't accept that cliche. I think I would regret not spending more time.
Okay, but anyway, yes. No,
but when you want to work, when I wanted to work, when I was writing books, I worked night and day and I loved it. And if somebody came along and said, I'm sorry, you have to go home and stop working. No, sometimes work
that's going to happen. But Michelle Gelfand, whom you missed last week, who was amazing, did say that she was optimistic. We were talking about the sort of the blight effects of some aspects of the internet. And she was very hopeful that we would correct ourselves on this. And then, that was very heartening to hear. And I think, you know what, I think I have to hope we're going to correct ourselves, on this plugged in 24/7. We're going to listen more to Arianna Huffington and get more sleep and put our phones to bed and have more, seek out more personal face-to-face relationships. But we have to go through this transitional bump, I guess.
But what does it have to be? All of us? Can't people just vote?
No, Christina, you can sit in your pajamas all day and be on Twitter, and no one is going to come into your house and arrest you. Okay?
Oh, by the way, you came up in my talk.
What?
When I was arguing with I guess it was with the UC. It was either was it Skidmore, where after my lecture, during the lecture, these people were quiet, but afterwards, all the gender studies majors at Skidmore College sort of followed me and said, follow her. And they said, we have more questions. And I thought, what the hell? I'll take their questions. So I sat down, even though I was exhausted because my plane had left D.C. late. I got to Skidmore 4 hours late. They rushed me in the car. I go up. I had to give the lecture off my iPad because I had no time to print it. And I'm over. And then after the lecture, they wanted to do this. But okay, I did it. And they were so angry at me for questioning statistics about sexual assault, as if Skidmore College and these boys at Skidmore were rapists, but never mind. But I brought up the example to them that I had encountered in Australia, where this young woman had been with a young man who talked her into sex, and she consented, but he'd kind of badgered her. And
he badgered her, and we also think he was her boyfriend, too, and he kept badgering her.
He badgered her. But in retrospect, she realizes it was rape. That's what she called it. So I said to these students, surely you wouldn't call it that. That made them frantic with rage. Of course, she said no. He didn't accept her initial dissent from sex. And I said, but wait a minute. Okay, my friend Danielle calls me up all the time and wants to go out or wants to do something. And I say, no, I'm tired. And she doesn't take no for an answer. She wears me out and I go out.
Pull you out of your house.
And I said, could I go to the police and accuse her of kidnapping? And they looked at me like, that's not the same. And I said, but I said no. And she would not accept no for an answer. And she argued with me. She just...
And she forced you to drink alcohol.
Yeah, no, because as you say, I do have, what did you call me? A potential... What is it called? Somebody that never wants to go outside? Not an agoraphobic.
Yeah.
Whatever it is. But no, you shut in. You call me a shut in.
I call you a shut in. I do.
And you argue with me. You don't accept. You don't. Non-consensual.
Am I always right? Am I always right?
Yes.
Yeah. Come on, say it.
Or let me think. Oh, except for going out to that Latin dance club.
Come on, that was great.
Where was mine?
That was so much
Great for you. I had to chaperone you because it was like being back with Debbie Hill in 9th grade at the airport club. But never mind.
Okay, go to your story. You had a very funny one about women podcasters.
All right, audience members. It's kind of unbearable and excruciating. Women podcasters face discrimination for their opinions and their voices.
Christina, your voice has changed. What's happening to you? What just happened to you?
Well, I'm just giving an do you know how to do that verbal what is it?
Uptick?
There's
Sort of
uptick.
Valley Girl?
It's all Valley Girl, and it is annoying.
Are you talking about
And you know what we
vocal
also
fry?
did
Vocal
like a lot?
fry. What is
Vocal fry.
Vocal
yes,
fry
we've
is-
done that before.
It's just like when you talk down here in your voice the whole time.
So I'm really thinking
Oh my God.
that I don't really know, as if I don't know. Anyway, so let me just read one more thing. So they're kvetching these podcasters, and they say that women are regularly criticized for not only what they say, but how they say it. Some women-led podcasts receive negative reviews online, lamenting the supposedly unlistenable tone of the host's voice. You know what? When I occasionally hear certain young women on NPR, and they're talking like that, but no, let me do it.
Oh, it's weird, and they're giving like political news from DC. You know,
Right.
Well, the president said today. Yeah, I mean, they do. We do it. We all do it.
I don't think I do
I
it.
think I just did it.
I don't think you do it. I never do it. I don't even know what it is. I don't acknowledge it. It was a joke in the 80s about Valley Girls. And you know what? Young women who do that, just learn not to do it. Because you know what it is? Women don't speak that way normally anywhere in the world. I've never heard a French woman do it, but it's like...
Oh, yeah.
Comment?
But where?
Is
What,
it
so
to
what
say?
they're saying? But what is okay? So we speak differently potentially on the radio,
Yes.
and this is causing us. Who are the women saying this?
Well,
What,
it's
is
a young...
discrimination, or we're not getting enough listeners. What's the problem?
Well, they say voices that deviate. Okay, let me say it the way they would. Voices that deviate from the white male norm are often policed as being not authoritative and not comforting, and as being annoying, irritating, hard to listen to, said McGregor. Generally, what they actually mean is that this voice I don't want to listen to because I'm not hearing it as a neutral voice.
Well, who are they claiming they're not hearing it? Men, but they're doing podcasts for women, so presumably.
Yeah,
You
it's
know,
probably
you can
women.
put up with
I
it.
don't think women can take it either. I can't take it. But anyway, they're kvetching.
Where was this story from? You said the name McGregor. Is it Scottish? Where is this
The
story
Star, the Vancouver, the Star.
Oh, it's Canadian, but Canadian women don't talk that way.
Well, apparently
They talk about-
do.
No, they say women's groups need more funding. That's what they say.
Well, I don't know.
A Canadian with an uptick. I can't do a Canadian woman with an uptick. I just can't do it.
I don't.
but-
That's hard. That's a.
Maybe they're just mad that. What's the name?
I think they're mad at the femsplainers because we don't get those
We
complaints.
don't get. We once had one. We did get one angry male once saying.
We talk over
girls
each other.
Giggle and interrupt too much, and I'm like, okay, I agree. Like interrupting is annoying, but I just did an uptick. Interrupting is annoying, but on the other hand, so don't listen. Like, what the hell? Go find another podcast. But so I think these women are complaining. What is the name of their podcast?
The Secret Feminist Agenda. You know what?
There might be another problem with listening to that podcast.
Can you imagine the kvetching on that show? Endless injustice collecting.
The Secret Feminist Canadian Agenda. When I order,
I'm going to try to do this.
Canadian, I get less cheese curds than the male customer.
Oh, cheese curds.
Cheese curds.
I had those in
okay.
Wisconsin. I thought that was a
I
Wisconsin.
know. We discussed it.
I know. I have.
Okay, well, girls, you're speaking to women, and presumably women don't mind that.
Yes, they do. I mind it terribly. I can't listen to it.
Okay.
And Zoe,
you're
to her credit, you don't do it.
Thank you. I took a radio class when I was in undergraduate.
And they corrected it? Mm-hmm. Did you have that from high school?
No, I don't think I had it necessarily, but the professor was a woman who worked for Marketplace for NPR, and she talked about the fact that listeners complained about her vocal fry all the time. So she gave us exercises.
Okay.
But you remember when actresses and actors had to take elocution classes, and there was this kind of standardized American accent, which was kind of, I guess, a little bit Eastern or Connecticut, but, when you are an actor, you spoke like this. And when you went for a career in the radio or television, you had to learn to speak like this. So now they're just complaining like any old way I speak, is a problem. And yeah, maybe it is. Maybe you don't have a voice for radio the way that some people, that cruel joke goes, you have a face for radio. But yeah, all right. Well, I don't think you're the target audience anyway, Christina, for the feminist secret agenda. So,
well, I don't know why you say that. That seems so exclusionary. I'm going to watch it.
All right. I think Zoe had.
Oh, Zoe has something that
you were a bit. Seeing of secret feminist agenda, Zoe had some article that she didn't really want to share with us in advance because she just wanted to get our reaction.
I just sort of feel like I get stuck with some of the real weird ones on this show.
Yeah, well, Zoe, you're young.
You're young.
Okay.
Our careers are
embarrassment.
I
vulnerable. You just have to be protected.
That's fine. I would argue that this is probably the weirdest thing that we have ever talked about on this show.
Oh, my God.
After I've done further research about what I'm going to say, it's okay. Have either of you ever heard of the term ecosexual?
Thank God, no.
Nope.
So ecosexuals refer to people that believe that they can halt climate change or make the earth better by engaging in sexual activities with nature.
Wait, that doesn't work?
What?
So apparently ecosexuality, according to a psychologist who works at the UNLV School of Community Health Sciences, says that ecosexuality can be measured in a sense that is similar to the Kinsey scale. So on one end, you have people who just want to use sustainable sex products that are better for the environment, which sounds like a great idea to me.
Biodegradable
condoms, things like that,
okay.
Right? But then you have people on the other end of the spectrum who roll around in the dirt having an orgasm while being covered in potting soil.
Wait a minute. Now,
I mean, I like gardening as much as the next person.
Well, these are people that like to have sex with trees.
No, wait a minute. I have a problem.
Ouch.
Can the potting soil consent?
Well, there you go. That's true.
So there are
tree consent.
and the tree, or
this is what we would call like earthy sex.
Yeah, but I have had how do I put this? Like some intimate encounters with waterfalls.
Well, this they said that some people like to masturbate underneath a waterfall.
Oh God, no. No.
Hey, you know what? Harvey Weinstein, when he was ejaculating into potted plants.
Oh my
God. He's an ecosexual.
He was misunderstood.
Oh, so misunderstood.
So this came from a Vice article because right now in Sydney, Australia, they have an ecosexual bathhouse that you can go and visit.
Ugh.
And so I looked it up, and it's a bathtub that is filled with soil, and it's in this small room, and you can go in and you can.
It seems like the hot tub at the Playboy Mansion in the grotto.
No, it seems like a kitty litter box. You're going to go in that dirty kitty litter box?
Oh, God.
But some of the other activities that you can do is they have finger condoms where you can stick your finger into an orchid.
That's kind of hot.
And then
praying mantis. Don't make that mistake.
Oh. Well, no. Some of the pictures have people. It'll be a couple having sex covered in bugs.
Okay, that's too much. Take it back.
See, so the most
How do we not,
extreme.
does this just lead to bestiality or buggyality or?
Well,
Buggyality.
actually, Danielle, if you're interested, they have ceremonies where
Insectophilia.
where you can marry the earth, the moon, and other natural entities.
Well, that's romantic.
I thought the moon was taken.
Yeah, apparently. Well, somebody is in a, quote, pollen-amorous relationship with the Appalachian Mountains.
Oh, I think
Pollen-amorous.
people with allergies are in a. No,
No, that's how I feel about
up with the
DC.
pollen.
We're going through
I think
divorce.
I read a funny Twitter that said, because it's allergy season, at least it's allergy season everywhere, and it said, the Twitter said, hey trees, it's really nice you're having all this sex. Could you cut down on it a little for those of us with allergies?
Well,
This is so weird.
Ecosexual.
Well, the ecosexual or I don't know if it's eco or ecosexual, but the advocates for this, apparently there are at least 100,000 people who now openly identify as ecosexual. And at last year's San Francisco Pride Parade, they had a huge campaign to get the letter E added into the LGBT.
We added to the LGBT.
into the
This is
acronym.
going to be as long as the alphabet,
Exactly.
I'm just going to say, I'm pro ABCD
So
EFG.
tell me, are performance artists enablers of all of this?
Well, yes, the exhibit that's at Sydney right now is all performance artists.
Where are they from?
That's a good question.
San
They're-
Francisco. Just tell me.
I would sort of assume so. They're from someplace.
This is like the worst single person's nightmare, where it's so bad you have to have sex with dirt.
Yeah.
This just brings a whole new meaning to that phrase. And not only can I not get a date, I am. This is bizarre.
So I encourage if you're curious to learn more about it, just put ecosexual into a Google image search. You will just. It is so.
And is there like a
Many-
marriage equality movement for dirt?
For dirt, I think we should start one.
I want to
What
marry.
about if you're manure? Is manure
Like, does Harvey Weinstein, is that what it was all about? He wanted to marry those plants?
I guess so.
Yeah,
So maybe he's just a misunderstood.
one with nature.
Oh, my God.
Okay, we have to stop talking about this. We have a very short time left.
And we haven't done the fat acceptance person.
Oh, I can't talk about that anymore. You had an article on a woman actually from Quillette dissenting on this whole people have a problem with my weight. And we're talking like women who are 400 pounds are the ones with the problem.
And she thinks that, like, if you have an overweight child and you suggest they should be on a diet, she says that they can't consent to the diet any more than the child can consent to having sex. So she compares putting the child on a diet to a kind of child abuse.
Yeah. Okay. You know what? This is we've gone down
too far.
such a rabbit hole of insanity that I think, Zoe, we had a little bit of listener reaction.
Yeah.
And then wrap this up.
I didn't get to my favorite part when I debated Roxane Gay and she defended the WNBA and suggested that their players, that it was unjust, that like the women basketball players in the WNBA weren't paid as much as the NBA. Now, do you appreciate how insane that is?
Yeah, it's a different audience. It's like
Well, by a magnitude of just incalculable. And what I tried to say, and then the audience freaked out, but when it comes to team sports like basketball or football or soccer, they're just not comparable because men are stronger, faster, and bigger than women on average. And
Christina, this is, to be fair, this is all going to be changed by trans women dominating female sports. So it's all going to work out in the end. There won't be women, quote unquote women, biological women in women's sports. So we'll have male sports on two fronts.
oh boy, well,
Just some with, hormonal therapy and
no more women, I mean, women are fantastic in certain sports. One likes ice skating and tennis, but I'm not sure about, if there's a LeBron James of women. I mean, men's professional team sports are I mean, there's just extreme competition and heroics. And women's team sports, no matter how skilled and admirable, they rarely compare in Promethean drama. And I don't even know if the trans are going to be able to do that. So just leave it alone.
We have to move on to listener reaction.
Okay, listener reaction. But if you do listen to the tape, I don't know if they edited it and took the best of it.
If you watch the video, you mean?
I mean, watch the video. And I'm almost speechless because the audience is cheering for the WNBA and suggesting that it's just an injustice that, a member of, I don't know, the Los Angeles, I forget what they were called, something or other, that they're not paid as much as LeBron James. Come on. He's one of the greatest athletes that ever lived. Moving on.
Okay, Zoe, let's move on to listener reaction.
Okay. All right. I've got 2 for us this week. So, hi, Christina. And to be fair, Danielle, they did write your name as Daniel, but you are Danielle.
Yeah, well, you know
That's
what?
dead naming her. That was her name before she was Danielle.
That's right.
Have you told them about your transitioning? No. Okay, moving on.
Okay, so been listening to your podcast and following your Twitter for a while now, and I love your content. It has opened my mind to a different way of viewing feminism and gender, such as removing excessive generalizations and misinformation about issues like the pay gap. I completed my undergraduate at a South African university where the left-wing type of excessive political correctness is taking hold and growing by the year with little room left for opposing views. You may know it already, but even the trans issues are here too. My alma mater is famous for campus, quote, rape culture allegations, so common in American universities, and is a symbol of broader African conversation that seems to import so much from the U.S. Just writing to say thank you for standing up for healthy feminism. Your podcast gives me hope for better discussions in our African countries. From Lee.
Well, that's sweet. I'm glad to know we have African listeners. That's amazing.
I think I wish that we could go there, the two of us, the femsplainers. Because you know what? Yeah. After all my campus visits, I don't want to go alone anymore. I want to go with you, Danielle.
Well, Lee said, I promise to get you a bottle of fine South African white wine for the white wine supremacist.
Oh, my God.
South African wine is good.
And I want to climb, what's it called? Tabletop Mountain?
Oh,
one of the beautiful hikes in the world.
Okay.
We're going.
So, hey, just pull together your Federalist Society sponsor.
Perfect.
Send us to South
I'm
Africa.
sorry we're not just exporting Coca-Cola anymore, but that was bad enough. All right, what's the next one? Thank you for writing.
Yeah, so this one comes from Patrick from Fairfax, so we're much closer.
Fairfax, Virginia.
Yes. So he says, hello, femsplainers. During the recent episode, How to Talk to People You Hate, you questioned why more offices and WeWork-type facilities don't have on-site infant and toddler care. Several years have passed since I last dealt with the regulations and codes that govern infant and toddler care, but I think the compliance burden might limit the number of offices that would provide this service. In the D.C. area, at least, infant-toddler care facilities must meet rigorous requirements, which is a good thing in my opinion, regarding staffing per child, sleeping facilities, specialized staff training, handling and storage of feeding materials, and more. These requirements, plus general low pay in the industry and liability risks, not only limit such facilities and offices, but in society in general. The D.C. area has a tragic shortage of infant and child care facilities, with lower and middle income working parents particularly hurt by the lack of such care. These parents usually can't afford nannies or babysitters, but they also don't have access to or can't afford outside or infant toddler care. Best to you all, Patrick.
Oh my God, he's a good mansplainer. I mean,
right, and this goes back to our thing, like with all these new wonderful innovations in workspaces where they have bicycles and ping pong tables and working bars. Why can't we have daycare? And that's what when I had suspected at the time it was liability issues, and this is kind of along those lines. Like, you know what would be a great idea for any female entrepreneur listening? Could be male, but let's make it female. Create a company that solves all a company's problems for daycare. And you just hired this company, and they come and they open a space in your company and they take care of all of that for a certain price we're
And
regulated.
They train super nannies, and yeah, that's that. You know what?
And don't make it the company's problem.
They outsource it.
American spirit. Yeah,
that's how we got that. By the way, that's why we have these private prisons. People think that it's, I don't know, it's just people, avaricious people wanting to make money in the private sector. It's actually because the states can't afford the liability. They're trying to unload the liability and have private companies.
Right.
So you can look at not that it's a model, but if you had private daycare, yes, we need.
Yeah, just a company like Kids Are Us. They just come to your company. They set up the area. It meets every regulation. They do the paperwork, and you just pay them. That would be a great thing.
Hey, why don't we do it?
Okay, well, let's, hey, guys, if you don't help support us on We Gather or Patreon, we might
have to run a daycare franchise.
All right, is that it, Zoe? I think we've done
that's
long,
it.
but it's been so nice to catch up with you guys. And,
I can't wait till you come back and everything is normal. I'm still worried.
Thank you for being such a help here.
Well,
Thank you for me being my bestie.
I'm your bestie, and I'm so glad darling Mandy is recovering, and I can't wait till she's here and that her dog's here and her doggy Ringo can get together with Izzy, although that doesn't always go well.
Ringo can start teaching Izzy how to be a hospital support animal.
You know what? I want to get that certification for Izzy because I need an emotional support
Don't
dog.
do it to the other people on the plane, though, Christina. Can you imagine Izzy on a plane? She'd be dragged out like that passenger.
No, she would. I took her when she was very, very young, and she ended up running up and down the aisle. But she was just a little 4-pound puff.
They're going to make you put her in the baggage compartment.
She was too cute. She was too cute. Everybody adored her. But, she's a little bigger now. She's 8 pounds. That's not as cute as 4 pounds. That's it.
And the yapping will be like a crying child.
She doesn't yap. I don't see the yapping, but okay.
Okay.
Just saying.
We'll see you soon, my dear. We'll be starting season 4, May 14th, so we're going to have a little week's break. And as always...
and a great lineup, an amazing lineup, and I can't wait for
we got a great lineup for season 4. And it will be our first anniversary. We'll be 1. We'll be 1 year old. So we have to celebrate that.
It's already?
Too.
Are we past it? It's only been a year.
No, we'll be I think it's May 6th, but anyway, May 14th, we'll celebrate our first year anniversary. So
can't wait.
Yeah. Okay, bye. Bye, ladies.
Bye, cosplayer. Bye.
See you soon. Bye.
Hey, thanks for listening to the Femsplainers. Stay with us by following us on Twitter and Facebook at Femsplainers and on Instagram at Femsplainers Podcast. You can always email questions and comments to contact@femsplainers.com. We read every one.
We are recorded at the American Enterprise Institute in Washington, D.C., and thanks to AEI Research Assistant Zoe Appler, who is our production assistant here in the studio, and thanks to Nat Frum, our audio and video editor, and occasional millennial mansplainer.
And listen to us on pretty much any of your favorite podcast platforms. And please remember to subscribe and like us at iTunes if possible. Every like helps us keep our solid 5-star rating. Cheers.